Good morning, people. Happy Thursday. You know, for all that talk of black women who always talk about Blackstan, they never really formulate to talk about how Blackstan came to be. If you ever listen to these black women that say that black community that they divesting for, how that community came to be, because we all know black women really don't know history, or they get amnesia about history, especially the divesting. So they will always utter the word Blackstan, because Blackstan, when you think about Blackstan, they think about the black men that's in their community, you know, the high crime rate that's due to the lack of resources and poverty, which we all know that those places are deprived from poverty. They are deprived from resources and tangibles. Hence, this is why you have all our violence with drugs and gangs and shit. But how did this community came to be? Let's see. What you had back in the 60s and 70s in places in cities like Detroit, we had what you call deurbanization of major metropolises, especially the places that had what you call industries like steel mills and shit like that, manufacturing, auto manufacturing. Let's take Detroit. Detroit, she had a lot of, in the 50s, all the way up from the 40s, all the way through the 50s, you had a lot of migrants that came from people that migrated to places like Detroit. A lot of them came from Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, Arkansas, Tennessee. A lot of these blacks came from these places for a new life, for jobs. So they moved into urban areas where mostly, all the black people congregated in. And these people even though they live in an urban environment, these people had families. They had children, they had wives. The men went to work, they provided for their families and all that. Well, throughout the 50s and 60s, they had what you call deurbanization. Deurbanization is where those big corporations move further out into what you call the suburban areas, and then the white people followed them to those places. So you had people that had to move further and further out. They had to drive further and further out to jobs. Well, a lot of those people didn't have money to travel out. So those areas went into decline. What happened is, throughout the 60s and 70s, you had what you call the civil rights movement. And the civil rights movement had this faction that broke off from the Black Power movement known as the feminist movement. Now, at the time, you had black women who wanted to be out there join the Black Panthers. If you ever seen that movie Panther, you seen that movie Panther, you seen how the black women wanted to join into the Black Panthers because they feel they want to be a part of the movement. So black men let them in. So once the black men let them black women in, what happened? Everything started changing in that movement. It started becoming more of a feminist movement. What happened is, these black women jumped ship on the civil rights movement and the Black Power movement to join the feminist movement. Gloria Steinem, this white Jewish woman's feminist movement. And white women jumped over her on it. Black women jumped over her on it. Before you know it, you had the government start saying, in order to destroy the black community, they had to promote the black woman. In order to promote the black woman, that means you had to destroy the black family. You had to destroy the black male. So that was their whole goal of promoting the black female over the black male, because let's face it, they don't see black women, white society and the white community don't see black women as a threat. See, what they didn't want to have was no more black Wall Streets and shit like that thriving black community. Those communities were built by black men. So they didn't want to have no more of that. They didn't want to have no more thriving black communities. They wanted to have a broken community where you had single mamas raising children, and they had what? You bring in the drugs, you bring in abject poverty, lack of resources. What happened? That community turned to shit. So what happened is, in these black communities, you had now communities vastly turned into a gynocracy that basically ran by the black women. This is what you call the formation of Blackstan. And Blackstan was basically built on the premise that the black woman is the head of the family. No more the men is now a matriarchy instead of a patriarchy. So now what happened is, today, let's fast forward. Right now you have this broken community. Like, once again, the same thing with drugs, violence, prolonged exposure to poverty create these situations. So now, on top of that, you got what you call women that want to divest. Now, for the most part, everybody would think that when you look at the divestment movement, you'll think that it's black girls that come from well-to-do families that were raised in the white community along with them. You'll think that. That's what they'll give you this notion. That's the black girls that's raised in primarily white communities. Nope. They're not. They happen. Due to the lack of, due to the fact that you do have black boys that live out there too in those communities, and they primarily gravitate to getting with white girls. That happens when so it's the same thing that happened to the black girls in those communities. Now, when you take that, the black girl in the hood, the lack of resources, it don't take nothing but a white dude with a little money to come in and sweep one of them chicks up. But the problem was happening. This what was the problem. You had white men coming in there, laying up with all these black women. It ain't just the white men. You had Arabs. You had other groups laying up with all these black women. So what you have now, primarily in the black community, is all these ambiguous looking kids running through the black community, hence Blackstan. That's why when Brother Media Man did that report, pulled that up Pew Research report, you found out that it was black men had less children out of wedlock than black women. Black women overwhelmingly had way more children out of wedlock than black men. Now you will think, okay, if black men are not having all these children out of wedlock, who are all these children being created by? Then if you put two and two together, you'll find out there was Muhammad at the corner store, Rodriguez that worked at that Mexican restaurant that was hooking us up with tacos and shit, or Brad swing through that was working at her job at Target or working at the office blowing her back out. So you got that situation where you have all these black women that have children out of wedlock by non-black men, because the math, how you gonna get, if all these black men laying up with these black women having all these children out of wedlock, them numbers will reflect that. But them numbers don't reflect that. So what they tell you black women been divesting and swirling it up with Brad, and Brad haven't been marrying them. So that tells you right there that if the divestment movement was a true work for black women, it actually worked, you will have a lot of these black women married to the white men these non-black men they have children with, but that's not the case. What you finding out is that a lot of these black women having children out of wedlock by all these non-black men and white men, and then they try to put it on black men and say all these children belong to black men, because automatically those women have those children alone, and they go off and have those children, they put down black on their birth certificate. So automatically, you would think that those children were black children being made by black men, when that's not the case. Those children are being raised by, those children are being born, fathered by non-black men. And these black women try to think they slick. They try to think they slick. See, they don't want to admit that swirling movement is a garbage. That's what they don't want to admit, is they taking L's all over the place. And they don't want to admit it. They don't want to admit that they taking these L's. You know, they can come in and try to promote it. It's like dressing a pig up. You did. That's all I'm saying.